From the east rose a golden empire. China entered its most brilliant age. Art and power moved together gracefully. History recorded glory in silent script. This was Imperial China's golden age, where culture, wealth, diplomacy flourished boldly. Dynasty defined civilization for centuries forward. Legacy shaped Asia's cultural foundation deeply. The Tang ruled from 618 until 907 ended dynasty. Nearly 3 centuries shaped continental affairs. Longevity proved strength of their governance. Chang'an became imperial capital magnificently, a city unmatched in global scale. Markets overflowed with distant foreign merchants. Streets echoed languages from many worlds. It was largest city of Earth. Urban life surpassed rivals astonishingly far. Night markets, palaces, monasteries coexisted harmoniously. Civilization breathed through its crowded avenues. Culture defined Tang identity profoundly. Poetry, music, painting reached unmatched refinement. Elite scholars shaped intellectual life continuously. Beauty became political language of empire. Trade routes tied Tang to continents. Silk Road carried goods, ideas, faiths. Foreign envoys entered court with tribute. China stood central in global networks. Governance achieved remarkable sophistication early. Examination systems selected officials by merit. Administration replaced aristocratic dominance steadily. State power became rational, organized, systematic. Influence radiated across East Asia widely. Japan, Korea, Vietnam absorbed Tang models. Writing, law, culture, and design transformed. Empires rarely shaped neighbors so deeply. The Tang reached unmatched continental authority. Its light illuminated Asia for centuries. Even in collapse, its legacy endured. A golden empire carved into memory. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to subscribe, like and share to help others discover our content. Leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. We'll keep bringing you more engaging and informative videos. Join our community and explore history with us every day. The Sui realm faced heavy turmoil. Massive projects strained state resources. Tax burdens crushed peasant livelihoods. Dissent began spreading across provinces. Grand Canal costs spiraled uncontrollably. Labor conscription emptied many villages. Merchants suffered under choking levies. State finances edged toward bankruptcy. Korean campaigns dragged disastrously on. Troop losses undermined imperial authority. Generals doubted the court's competence. Frontier garrisons murmured about revolt. Peasants erupted into militant uprisings. Bandit armies seized key transport routes. Local elites sheltered rebellious factions. Officials struggled to contain the chaos. Political legitimacy rapidly deteriorated. Court intrigues worsened internal divisions. Senior ministers plotted ambitious coups. Trust evaporated within palace corridors. Emperor Yong sought authoritarian control. Secret police hunted real and imagined foes. Executions fueled deeper public resentment. Fear eclipsed loyalty across the empire. Regional warlords expanded autonomous power. Provincial armies stopped obeying commands. Governors negotiated with rebel leaders. Central institutions visibly fractured apart. Military morale collapsed after defeats. Soldiers deserted to protect families. Commanders defected for personal survival. Imperial strategy fell into disarray. Trade stagnated under constant disruptions. Famine haunted drought-stricken prefectures. Disease spread among displaced civilians. Refugee columns flooded major cities. Infrastructure decayed from neglect and war. Canals clogged, and roads became unsafe. Communication networks lost coordination. Administrative reports ceased to arrive. Sui authority shrank to few strongholds. Foreign envoys questioned dynasty's future. Border tribes raided with growing confidence. Diplomatic prestige completely unraveled. Rebel leaders proclaimed rival mandates. Competing courts claimed heaven's approval. Astrologers justified dramatic regime change. Popular sentiment embraced new legitimacy. The imperial clan fractured violently. Princes fought for successional advantage. Alliances shifted with ruthless opportunism. Civil war sealed the dynasty's demise. At last the Sui throne collapsed entirely. Emperor Yong met a tragic downfall. Mandate of heaven abandoned the dynasty. China awaited a new ruling power. Aristocratic Li clan held noble lineage, mixed heritage linked Turkic steppe elites. Military reputations enhanced family prestige. Court circles watched their growing influence. Li Yuan served as frontier commander. He governed Taiyuan with strict discipline. Troops admired his calm strategic judgment. Borders remained stable under his leadership. Sui chaos opened unprecedented opportunities. Northern rebellions weakened imperial reach. Power vacuums emerged across major corridors. Local elites sought reliable military patrons. Li Yuan built strong regional alliances. He negotiated with powerful noble houses. Old friendships turned into political networks. Future support foundations solidly prepared. His sons displayed remarkable leadership talent. Li Shimin mastered battlefield maneuver tactics. Brothers coordinated espionage and diplomacy. The clan functioned as unified enterprise. When Emperor Yong lost all credibility, Li Yuan assessed shifting mandate fortunes. Astrologers predicted dynastic transition soon. Signs encouraged decisive political action. He secured control of Taiyuan garrisons, mobilized seasoned cavalry and infantry units, fortified supply lines toward strategic passes, prepared to march against weakened Sui centers. Steppe tribes offered conditional cooperation. Turkic envoys pledged neutral observation. Foreign courts anticipated sudden power change. Diplomacy favored the rising Li coalition. Li Yuan proclaimed righteous rebellion publicly. He accused Sui of violating heaven's order. Moral justification rallied scholar administrators. Confucian rhetoric legitimized military campaigns. Victory in northern battles boosted momentum. Gate cities surrendered without prolonged sieges. Local officials pledged allegiance for stability. Merchants reopened markets under Li protection. Recruits flooded in from nearby prefectures. Disgruntled Sui officers defected enthusiastically. Talented ministers joined to rebuild governance. The movement transformed into proto-dynastic force. Religious figures offered mandate interpretations. Buddhist monks predicted future golden era. Taoist priests framed Li rule as destined. Heavenly omens reinforced public confidence. Li Yuan advanced toward Chang'an capital. Morale soared across expanding territories. Logistics operated with impressive efficiency. War fatigue weakened remaining Sui defenders. The dynasty's throne finally toppled completely. Li Yuan entered Chang'an as victorious ruler. He announced restoration of imperial harmony. The Li family formally ascended to power. The rise reshaped China's political landscape. A new dynasty prepared long-term governance. Mandate of heaven transferred to fresh hands. The Tang era stood ready to begin. Li Yuan assumed title of Emperor Gaozu. He declared establishment of Tang Dynasty. Court heralds announced new imperial mandate. China entered transformative political chapter. Administrative reconstruction began immediately. Former Sui systems carefully evaluated anew. Useful institutions retained for continuity. Ineffective mechanisms replaced through reform. Chang'an restored as Grand Imperial capital. City planning emphasized order and symmetry. Markets divided into regulated commercial zones. Avenues showcased majestic architectural projects. Gaozu recruited veteran Sui administrators. Scholars drafted revised bureaucratic codes. Local governance standardized across prefectures. Officials subjected to merit-based evaluations. Military structure reorganized for stability. Frontier commands reassigned loyal generals. Cavalry units received improved provisioning. Training emphasized discipline and mobility. Taxation policies softened peasant burdens. Corvée labor demands drastically reduced. Agrarian productivity steadily recovered. Villages experienced renewed economic relief. Gaozu secured alliances with noble families. Marriage diplomacy cemented aristocratic unity. Civil factions absorbed into Tang establishment. Elite cooperation prevented early court conflicts. Foreign relations adopted cautious pragmatism. Turkic neighbors treated with mutual respect. Tributary diplomacy resumed broader trade flows. Border tensions eased through negotiated agreements. Legal revisions promoted Confucian principles. Punishments adjusted for proportional justice. State ideology emphasized moral governance. Public trust gradually strengthened nationwide. Religious communities gained imperial favor. Buddhist monasteries received significant patronage. Taoist institutions influenced court symbolism. Plural spiritual networks reinforced legitimacy. Infrastructure reconstruction revived connectivity. Grand Canal restored vital grain transport. Roads repaired across northern commanderies. Communication routes linked capital with provinces. Economic recovery energized urban populations. Artisans resumed workshop production activities. Merchants reopened caravans along Silk Road. Market confidence rose after years of chaos. Propaganda celebrated restored cosmic harmony. Poets praised dawning of prosperous era. Historians documented mandate transformation. People anticipated enduring imperial stability. Gaozu successfully stabilized foundational rule. He prepared dynasty for generational consolidation. Succession politics quietly gained importance. The Tang Empire firmly anchored its beginning. Li Shimin ascended as Emperor Taizong. Succession resolved through decisive action. Court stabilized after brief internal tension. Dynasty transitioned into confident maturity. Taizong reorganized central administrative organs. 3 departments coordinated policy formation. 6 ministries managed practical state functions. Governance achieved unprecedented bureaucratic clarity. Imperial examinations expanded recruitment pathways. Scholars competed through rigorous classical testing. Merit outweighed aristocratic patronage factions. Civil service professionalized across vast territories. Taizong cultivated loyal and capable counselors. Weizhong offered frank strategic criticism. Emperor welcomed honest remonstrance traditions. Policy improved through constructive intellectual debate. Military campaigns strengthened frontier security. Northern tribes challenged Tang authority repeatedly. Taizong led disciplined forces with tactical brilliance. Steppe coalitions shattered under sustained offensives. Diplomatic prestige rose across wider Eurasia. Envoys traveled to distant royal courts. Foreign rulers sought Tang recognition eagerly. Tributary missions enriched cultural exchanges. Legal code received comprehensive refinement. Tang code standardized punishments and procedures. Balance between severity and leniency achieved. Future dynasties adopted it as enduring model. Agrarian reforms boosted rural productivity. Equal field system distributed cultivable lands. Peasants secured plots with lower obligations. Village economies regained lasting stability. Religious institutions flourished under imperial tolerance. Buddhist monks translated sacred scriptures tirelessly. Taoist masters advised on court ritual symbolically. Plural traditions enriched China's cultural fabric. Historians compiled grand dynastic records. State archives preserved administrative documents. Official histories reinforced mandate legitimacy. Taizong curated narrative of rightful rulership. Chang'an blossomed into cosmopolitan metropolis. Merchants imported exotic goods and technologies. Scholars debated foreign philosophies enthusiastically. Urban society mirrored empire's confident expansion. Trade routes along Silk Road revived vibrantly. Caravans crossed deserts and mountain corridors. Customs offices regulated long-distance commerce. State revenues increased through stable taxation. Taizong cultivated benevolent image intentionally. He toured provinces to hear public grievances. Ritual humility softened memories of earlier violence. People praised emperor as enlightened ruler. Era marked by prosperity and consolidation. Institutions matured through disciplined stewardship. Empire projected power with cultural sophistication. Tang prestige resonated from steppe to ocean. Early Tang governance pursued steady normalization. Administrative routines regained predictable rhythm. Provincial reports flowed without disruption. State coordination reached impressive efficiency. Fiscal reforms balanced revenue and expenses. Tax policy harmonized rural obligations fairly. Peasant households avoided crushing state burdens. Economic confidence returned to countryside markets. Equal field allocations reduced land disputes. Local magistrates supervised property registries. Legal procedure settled competing claims peacefully. Agrarian order fortified broader social stability. Army demobilization reduced wartime pressures. Veterans resettled as productive farmers peacefully. Frontier garrisons maintained necessary defenses. Military presence ceased to dominate daily life. Court mediation diffused aristocratic rivalries. Influential families accepted Tang supremacy. Imperial marriages integrated elite lineages. Factional tensions declined significantly overall. Religious institutions supported moral governance. Monks preached virtues of social harmony. Taoist rites sanctified imperial cosmology. State ideology embedded in spiritual culture. Infrastructure repairs improved transportation reliability. Canals facilitated grain shipments to capital. Caravan routes linked distant prefectural centers. Postal relays accelerated administrative messaging. Urban life flourished inside walled metropolises. Craft guilds expanded manufacturing specializations. Markets diversified goods from across continents. Chang'an evolved into global cultural crossroads. Legal code ensured predictable social expectations. Commoners understood penalties and protections. Judicial appeals provided channels for redress. Rule of law strengthened faith in dynasty. Diplomacy stabilized relations with neighbors. Tributary embassies resumed ceremonial exchanges. Foreign merchants obtained legitimate trade rights. Peaceful coexistence replaced earlier confrontation. Educational institutions trained future officials. Confucian academies cultivated classical literacy. Examination candidates memorized canonical texts. Meritocratic ideals shaped governing elite identity. Population growth signaled renewed prosperity. Rural settlements expanded fertile farmlands. Artisans multiplied in burgeoning urban districts. Demographic vitality reinforced economic resilience. Imperial culture set refined artistic standards. Poets celebrated peace and cultivated aesthetics. Painters immortalized landscapes and courtly scenes. Cultural expression flourished under stable patronage. By decades and stability firmly established. Dynasty secured mandate through results, not claims. People trusted regime for order and prosperity. Tang state entered long era of imperial brilliance. Tang emperors established strong central authority. Power concentrated at the imperial court. Decisions flowed from capital to provinces. Ministers implemented policies with rigorous oversight. 3 departments coordinated policy formulation efficiently. Chancellery drafted edicts and proposals clearly. Secretariat reviewed documents for proper legality. Department system reduced bureaucratic inefficiency greatly. 6 ministries managed specific governmental functions. Personnel, revenue, rights, war, justice, works. Each ministry specialized in focused administration. Clarity of roles minimized internal conflicts significantly. Emperor personally controlled supreme appointments. Officials served directly under imperial command. Central bureaucracy supervised provincial governance carefully. Loyalty was demanded throughout the hierarchical system. Records maintained meticulously for state accountability. Archives preserved administrative, fiscal, military data. Information allowed precise control over distant regions. Documentation ensured governance remained transparent and consistent. Policy initiatives standardized across the empire. Local magistrates followed uniform regulations closely. Instructions delivered through carefully maintained channels. Centralized system maintained coherence in diverse territories. Court debates influenced final decision-making process. Advisors presented multiple perspectives for consideration. Emperor evaluated arguments before issuing decree. Consultation strengthened legitimacy of bureaucratic directives. Officials rotated periodically to prevent corruption. Assignments balanced regional expertise with loyalty checks. Merit and trust determined official career advancement. Institutional practices reinforced stable governance mechanisms. Central oversight extended to legal enforcement. Courts adhered to codified procedures faithfully. Judges reported directly to higher administrative levels. Uniformity reduced local abuse of power drastically. Tang emperors monitored resource allocation rigorously. Tax collection, labor quotas, military funding tracked. Budgetary discipline enforced through meticulous reporting. Centralization ensured efficient mobilization of state resources. Cultural and educational policies guided by bureaucracy. Schools and examinations supervised by central authorities. Curriculum aligned with imperial ideology consistently. Bureaucracy shaped societal norms and intellectual life. Foreign relations also operated under central supervision. Envoys reported directly to ministries and emperor. Tributary communications carefully regulated through protocols. Diplomatic consistency reinforced empire's prestige abroad. Emergency management coordinated from the capital. Natural disasters, rebellions, epidemics quickly addressed. Centralized communication allowed rapid response deployment. Efficient crisis handling strengthened public confidence greatly. The centralized bureaucracy defined Tang imperial strength. Unified command maintained throughout vast Chinese territories. Institutions balanced power, discipline, and administrative clarity. Centralized structure remained backbone of Tang governance. Tang Dynasty reinforced merit-based recruitment rigorously. Civil service exams determined entry to bureaucracy. Scholars competed through classical Confucian examinations. Success granted access to prestigious official positions. Examinations tested knowledge of Confucian classics thoroughly. Analytical essays assessed moral reasoning and policy insight. Candidates memorized texts with disciplined dedication. Performance determined social mobility and government eligibility. Provincial exams selected local talented scholars. Top performers advanced to metropolitan testing stages. Final evaluations conducted in imperial capital carefully. Winners received official appointments and imperial recognition. Meritocratic system reduced aristocratic monopoly effectively. Nobles could no longer dominate official ranks. Talented commoners gained opportunities for advancement. Social mobility strengthened state cohesion and legitimacy. Officials' competence improved administrative efficiency greatly. Policy implementation became more consistent nationwide. Scholar officials guided legal, fiscal, and educational reforms. Bureaucratic professionalism increased stability and governance quality. Examination quotas ensured geographic diversity across provinces. Candidates represented multiple regions and social backgrounds. Local elites integrated with central administration seamlessly. Empowered provincial talents contributed to imperial authority. Regular training sessions enhanced official expertise continuously. Curriculum emphasized practical knowledge for administration. Imperial tutors advised examinees in moral governance. Scholarly discipline prepared candidates for complex challenges. Examinations promoted loyalty to emperor and state. Officials owed allegiance to meritocratic system primarily. Reduced factionalism prevented hereditary dominance significantly. Policy decisions reflected competence rather than personal ties. Records of examination performance meticulously preserved centrally. Historical archives tracked careers of successful scholars. Accountability maintained through documentation and monitoring. Transparency enhanced credibility of bureaucratic appointments. Scholar officials influenced policy debate and strategic planning. Critical thinking encouraged through essay and administrative tests. Policy proposals evaluated rationally rather than politically. Decision-making benefited from intellectual rigor systematically. Merit-based recruitment inspired widespread social ambition. Families encouraged children to pursue classical education. Cultural emphasis on scholarship enforced moral governance. Education became both civic duty and career pathway. The strengthened civil service system ensured stability. Qualified officials maintained administrative consistency effectively. Tang bureaucracy relied on talent rather than privilege. Examinations remained cornerstone of long-term governance success. Tang Code standardized laws across the empire. Imperial legislators combined Confucian and legal principles. Punishments clearly defined to ensure justice. Legal system promoted fairness and social stability. Crimes classified into distinct categories systematically. Murder, theft, fraud, rebellion each codified. Procedures detailed for investigation and judgment. Judges followed written regulations without personal bias. Tang Code emphasized proportionality in sentencing carefully. Minor offenses received lighter punishments accordingly. Serious crimes incurred severe, predetermined penalties. Uniform application prevented corruption and arbitrary rulings. Legal reforms reduced local abuses effectively. Magistrates held accountable for improper judgments. Appeals permitted review by higher authorities. Oversight strengthened citizen confidence in governance. Code integrated moral education into legal framework. Offenders encouraged to reflect and reform ethically. Punishments reinforced societal norms and proper behavior. Law promoted harmony between state and people. Officials trained extensively in Tang legal principles. Legal scholars advised magistrates on complex cases. Interpretation remained consistent across provinces reliably. Court rulings adhered strictly to codified statutes. Tang Code influenced future dynasties significantly. Subsequent laws in Song, Ming, Qing followed structure. It became model for East Asian legal systems. Legacy of Tang law endured for centuries. Criminal and civil disputes handled systematically. Property conflicts, family matters, inheritance issues. Rules provided clear guidance for magistrates. Justice was predictable, reducing social tension. Central government monitored local enforcement rigorously. Officials submitted regular reports to provincial superiors. Accountability ensured uniform application of regulations. Law served both administrative and moral purposes. Code emphasized loyalty to emperor and state. Defiance against authority clearly punished by law. Legal framework strengthened imperial legitimacy effectively. State maintained control over rebellious factions consistently. Tang legal system balanced deterrence with fairness. Punishments combined correction with societal protection. Legal clarity minimized opportunities for exploitation. Rule of law became integral to Tang governance. Tang Code unified diverse regions under common law. Local customs adapted without undermining central authority. Legal uniformity contributed to political and social cohesion. Code ensured stable governance across vast empire. Laws codified through Tang Code remain influential. Foundation of East Asian jurisprudence and civil order. Combining ethics, clarity, and practicality ensured longevity. Tang legal achievements reinforced empire's administrative strength. Tang emperors carefully balanced military and civil powers. Civil officials handled governance, law, and administration. Military generals managed defense and frontier security. Separation prevented concentration of power dangerously. Emperor monitored both groups closely for loyalty. Officials reported on troop movements and garrison strength. Generals' promotions required imperial approval consistently. Checks ensured no faction could dominate court politics. Civil bureaucracy controlled taxation and fiscal policies. Revenue funded army operations without overburdening population. Ministers allocated grain, weapons, and soldier salaries. Coordination prevented logistical mismanagement or corruption. Military commands rotated to avoid entrenched influence. Strategic appointments favored loyalty over family connections. Civil officers often inspected army operations periodically. Transparency reinforced trust between court and commanders. Frontier stability depended on competent military leadership. Civil officials rarely interfered in tactical battlefield decisions. Local administration ensured supply and intelligence continuity. Balance maintained both efficiency and centralized control. Merit-based appointments applied in military structure also. Generals demonstrated skill and discipline before advancement. Tactical success influenced status within imperial hierarchy. Performance, not noble birth, determined career progression. Civil officials advised on campaign planning strategically. Councillors evaluated risks and logistics carefully. Emperor Taizong integrated advice with personal judgment. Collaboration strengthened both civil and military effectiveness. Inspections discouraged corruption and overreach among commanders. Officials reported troop misconduct and administrative lapses. Generals accountable to emperor maintained army discipline. Checks prevented abuse of power during peacetime. Military achievements recognized through honors and titles. Civil officials rewarded for effective governance simultaneously. Recognition system fostered cooperation across institutional lines. Both groups contributed to Tang stability and prosperity. In times of crisis, emperor directly intervened decisively. Civil and military leaders coordinated emergency response efficiently. Balance allowed rapid mobilization without bureaucratic delay. Tang's state remained resilient during external threats. Peaceful provinces relied primarily on civil administration. Military presence reserved for frontier or rebellious regions. Civic officials promoted agriculture, trade, and justice locally. Integration strengthened legitimacy and public confidence consistently. Education emphasized loyalty, ethics, and competence for both. Military academies trained officers in strategy and governance. Scholar officials learned administrative law and provincial management. Dual expertise supported harmonious imperial governance system. The balance prevented coups and internal power struggles. Emperor retained ultimate authority over both domains. Tang Dynasty projected strength while maintaining institutional harmony. Civil-military equilibrium became hallmark of Tang stability. Tang Dynasty organized empire to carefully structured provinces. Each province governed by appointed civil officials. Governors supervised local administration and fiscal policies. Clear hierarchies ensured orders reached distant regions. Prefects managed counties within provincial jurisdictions. Daily operations, tax collection, and law enforcement. Local magistrates reported regularly to higher authorities. Communication channels maintained stability across vast territories. Standardized procedures ensured uniform governance practices. Policies implemented consistently across urban and rural areas. Officials trained to follow codified Tang regulations. Accountability reinforced central authority throughout the empire. Taxation system balanced revenue and peasant welfare. Accurate land registers supported fair collection. Corvée labor organized efficiently for public projects. Provincial treasuries reported directly to central government. Infrastructure projects monitored by provincial administrators. Roads, canals, and bridges maintained for trade. Irrigation systems supervised to enhance agricultural output. Public works improved economic and social stability. Judicial functions integrated within provincial administration. Magistrates adjudicated civil, criminal, and family disputes. Appeals escalated to higher authorities when necessary. Legal uniformity maintained throughout all prefectures. Provincial military units coordinated with central command. Local garrisons maintained security and frontier stability. Civil administrators monitored soldier conduct carefully. Balance ensured order without threatening imperial control. Communication networks linked capital to farthest provinces. Courier systems delivered edicts and reports rapidly. Regular inspections ensured compliance with imperial directives. Provincial governance reflected centralized administrative efficiency. Officials cultivated relationships with local elites strategically. Cooperation minimized unrest and improved public loyalty. Influential families integrated into administration voluntarily. Social harmony reinforced through measured governance practices. Agriculture and commerce thrived under competent oversight. Provincial markets regulated for fair trade practices. Merchants and peasants benefited from consistent administration. Economic productivity supported long-term empire stability. Emergency management handled efficiently at provincial level. Floods, famine, and rebellion addressed proactively. Rapid response minimized disruption and human suffering. Local authority acted decisively while obeying central orders. Provincial education promoted Confucian ideals and state loyalty. Schools trained future officials for civil service exams. Scholar officials integrated provincial knowledge with central policy. Education strengthened administrative competence and governance culture. Regular reporting ensured central awareness of local conditions. Audits and inspections maintained integrity of provincial operations. Transparency fostered confidence between emperor and citizens. Provincial administration became backbone of Tang stability. Tang provincial system balanced autonomy and central control. Efficient governance facilitated economic, social, and military coordination. Uniform policies reinforced imperial authority throughout empire. This structure sustained Tang prosperity for generations. Emperor Taizong strengthened military organization efficiently. He reorganized units for optimal battlefield performance. Commanders reported directly to central authorities consistently. Centralized control ensured loyalty and operational discipline. Infantry and cavalry received systematic training regularly. Drills emphasized coordination, speed, and tactical maneuvering. Generals instructed in logistics and supply management. Troops learned both offensive and defensive strategies. Recruitment emphasized merit over aristocratic connections. Skilled soldiers advanced through demonstrated battlefield ability. Peasant conscripts trained under experienced officers carefully. Military professionalism replaced reliance on hereditary privilege. Fortifications reinforced along critical border regions. Walls, watchtowers, and garrisons strategically constructed. Defensive structures integrated with mobile field forces. Protection strengthened against nomadic incursions effectively. Taizong implemented standardized equipment and armaments. Weapons, armor, and horses centrally allocated efficiently. Uniforms and supplies maintained troop morale consistently. Logistical planning supported sustained campaign readiness. Intelligence networks expanded throughout frontier regions. Spies reported enemy movements and internal disturbances. Information helped preempt rebellions and invasions strategically. Intelligence became key component of military planning. Military law codified under Tang legal principles. Discipline strictly enforced with defined penalties. Desertion, mutiny, and negligence punished appropriately. Order maintained professionalism across all ranks. Strategic doctrines emphasized both flexibility and initiative. Commanders encouraged to adapt plans to evolving circumstances. Taizong personally reviewed campaign strategies carefully. Emperor balanced authority with calculated delegation. Alliances with border tribes reinforced regional security. Diplomacy reduced risk of large-scale conflicts. Nomadic allies integrated into Tang military campaigns. Combined forces strengthened Tang dominance in northern regions. Infrastructure improvements supported rapid troop movements. Roads, bridges, and canals enabled swift reinforcement. Supply chains maintained throughout campaigns reliably. Mobility allowed Tang forces to respond quickly to threats. Military academies trained future officers systematically. Instruction included tactics, logistics, and imperial protocol. Scholars' officers blended strategic knowledge with ethical training. Competent leadership ensured longevity of Tang military power. Taizong's reforms enhanced coordination between army branches. Infantry, cavalry, and archers operated in unified formations. Combined arms tactics improved battlefield effectiveness significantly. Integrated forces dominated campaigns across varied terrain. Campaign success relied on careful planning and logistics. Food, weapons, and medical supplies pre-positioned strategically. Preparation prevented battlefield attrition and operational delays. Taizong emphasized thorough planning above brute force. Public ceremonies celebrated military achievements regularly. Victories reinforced emperor's prestige and army morale. Soldiers motivated by rewards, recognition, and imperial favor. Symbolism strengthened loyalty to both emperor and dynasty. Reforms under Taizong established lasting military dominance. Tang armies became disciplined, versatile, and efficient. Systematic organization sustained frontier control and expansion. Foundation laid for Tang Empire's long-term security. Tang armies advanced decisively into Central Asia, allied with local rulers to secure trade routes. Campaigns aimed to control key Silk Road cities. Strategic victories expanded Tang influence westward rapidly. Generals led coordinated cavalry and infantry operations. Fortresses captured along critical river valleys. Supply lines maintained through careful logistical planning. Tang forces established garrisons to hold conquered territories. In Korea, Tang engaged Goguryeo in protracted campaigns. Naval and land forces combined for effective assaults. Alliances with Silla strengthened Tang operational position. Persistent efforts aimed at unifying Korean peninsula under influence. Tang diplomacy accompanied military conquests strategically. Tributary states recognized Tang authority voluntarily. Local leaders swore allegiance to imperial court. Cultural exchanges accompanied political and military integration. Frontier populations monitored and incorporated into administration. Tang officials appointed to oversee local governance. Military governors ensured stability and loyalty. Integration prevented rebellions and fostered long-term control. Central Asian campaigns aimed to secure trade and wealth. Silk, horses, and precious metals transported safely. Merchants and envoys traveled under Tang protection. Economic prosperity reinforced by military dominance regionally. Goguryeo resistance required innovative tactical strategies. Sieges, ambushes, and coordinated attacks implemented successfully. Tang forces adapted to mountainous and riverine terrain. Logistics and intelligence ensured sustained campaign effectiveness. Tang conquests facilitated cultural diffusion across regions. Buddhism, art, and technology spread along occupied territories. Local elites adopted Tang administrative practices gradually. Imperial influence shaped social and political structures widely. Alliances with nomadic tribes eased military campaigns. Turkic and other steppe groups provided cavalry support. Mutual benefits included protection and economic incentives. Tang secured borders while extending political authority. Victory celebrations reinforced emperor's legitimacy publicly. Triumphal processions highlighted Tang military prowess. Soldiers rewarded with honors and land allocations. Public morale and loyalty strengthened throughout empire. Conquest campaigns were carefully balanced with administration. Tang established permanent garrisons to maintain control. Provincial officials integrated local populations into governance. Stability ensured long-term retention of newly acquired regions. Success in Central Asia opened routes to Persia. Tang influence reached far beyond immediate borders. Korean campaigns secured tributary status and trade advantages. Empire projected power across East Asia effectively. Military strategy combined offense, defense, and diplomacy. Tong adapted to varied terrains and political landscapes. Central Command coordinated multi-front operations efficiently. Resulting conquests reinforced Tong dominance in the region. Tong conquests created a network of loyal protectorates. Economic, cultural, and military integration followed systematically. Control over Silk Road enhanced both wealth and prestige. Empire expanded far beyond traditional Chinese boundaries. Eastern Turks threatened Tong northern borders consistently. Nomadic raids disrupted trade and frontier stability. Emperor Taizong prioritized decisive military campaigns, aiming to secure northern territories permanently. Tong generals led disciplined cavalry and infantry forces. Ambushes, feints, and strategic maneuvers executed precisely. Logistics ensured sustained supply lines and mobility. Troop coordination outmatched Turkic nomadic tactics efficiently. Alliances with other steppe tribes strengthened Tong operations. Turkic rivals isolated diplomatically and militarily strategically. Intelligence networks tracked movements and vulnerabilities carefully. Preemptive strikes weakened enemy leadership significantly. Taizong personally supervised campaign planning closely. Generals reported directly for operational guidance. Command structure ensured flexibility and rapid response. Combined forces maximized effectiveness against mobile adversaries. Siege warfare employed for fortified Turkic encampments. Tong artillery and archers provided critical support. Field battles emphasized cavalry mobility and coordination. Superior tactics overwhelmed Turkic forces repeatedly. Defeat of Eastern Turks secured key trade routes. Silk Road caravans traveled without fear or disruption. Borders stabilized under Tong military administration permanently. Economic and political influence extended into steppe regions. Turkic leadership captured or subdued by Tong authority. Former rivals incorporated into Tong protectorate system. Local elites granted titles and obligations strategically. Integration reduced future threats while enhancing loyalty. Tong frontier garrisons fortified against possible revolts. Military colonies established to monitor nomadic populations. Training emphasized rapid response and defensive readiness. Preparedness deterred further incursions effectively. Victory reinforced Emperor Taizong's legitimacy and prestige. Courts celebrated success through ceremonies and proclamations. Soldiers rewarded generously to maintain morale and loyalty. Public confidence in Tong military power reached new heights. Campaigns demonstrated Tong combination of strategy and diplomacy. Alliances, intelligence, and battlefield tactics coordinated perfectly. Nomadic challenge transformed into permanent frontier security. Tong Empire solidified northern borders decisively. Eastern Turkic defeat opened opportunities for regional expansion. Central Asia trade flourished under safe Tong supervision. Political influence extended to steppe tribes diplomatically. Empire's prestige and control strengthened across vast regions. Taizong's military leadership became model for future emperors. Discipline, planning, and strategy ensured long-term dominance. Tong authority established over previously hostile nomadic powers. Northern frontier remained secure for subsequent imperial generations. Tong established garrisons along vulnerable border regions. Soldiers stationed to monitor and deter invasions. Strategic locations included northern steppes and western deserts. Permanent presence maintained imperial control effectively. Garrisons organized under experienced military commanders carefully. Commanders reported directly to central government authorities. Local administration coordinated with military oversight continuously. Clear chain of command ensured rapid response capability. Protectorates governed semi-autonomous frontier populations strategically. Tong officials integrated local elites into governance structures. Tributary leaders swore allegiance to imperial court regularly. System promoted stability without constant direct intervention. Infrastructure supported garrison operations efficiently. Roads, forts, and supply depots maintained consistently. Communication lines linked garrisons with provincial headquarters. Logistics enabled sustained military presence over vast distances. Garrison soldiers engaged in both defense and administration, maintained order among local populations effectively, oversaw collection of taxes and tribute diligently, protected trade routes and caravans from raiding parties. Cultural integration accompanied military and administrative control. Local populations introduced to Tang laws and customs gradually. Buddhism, Confucian practices, and Chinese language encouraged. Fusion strengthened loyalty while reducing potential resistance. Garrisons acted as rapid response forces for emergencies. Floods, rebellions, and invasions managed locally. Commanders coordinated with provincial officials efficiently. Imperial supervision ensured consistent enforcement of policies. Protectorates served as buffer zones against nomadic incursions. Steppe tribes monitored and occasionally allied with Tang. Diplomatic gifts and marriage alliances reinforced loyalty. Strategic diplomacy complemented military oversight successfully. Regular rotation of officers prevented corruption and local domination. New commanders introduced to maintaining partial governance. Military and civil cooperation ensured sustainable frontier stability. Empire projected power without overextending central authority. Garrison towns became centers of economic and cultural exchange. Markets facilitated trade between Tang officials and locals. Craftsmen and merchants settled around fortified positions. Frontiers developed both militarily and economically under supervision. Training exercises maintained troop readiness permanently. Soldiers drilled in coordinated maneuvers and tactics. Intelligence gathered on potential threats consistently. Preparedness allowed Tang to respond to sudden crises. Protectorate strengthened Tang influence in Central Asia. Local elites incorporated into Tang administration voluntarily. Trade, diplomacy, and military oversight reinforced control. Buffer regions ensured long-term security of the empire. Tang frontier system became model for subsequent dynasties. Balanced military presence with civil administration effectively. Integration of local populations promoted loyalty and cooperation. Garrisons and protectorates stabilized borders and expanded influence. Tang secured key trade routes across Central Asia. Silk, spices, and precious metals transported safely. Caravans traveled under protection of garrison forces. Economic prosperity strengthened both empire and frontier regions. Diplomatic missions accompanied trade to distant states. Envoys visited Persia, India, and other kingdoms. Tributary relations reinforced Tang prestige internationally. Foreign courts recognized emperor's authority symbolically. Tang garrisons safeguarded oasis cities strategically. Fortified settlements became hubs for commerce and culture. Merchants, artisans, and scholars gathered in thriving centers. Cultural exchange spread Buddhism, arts, and technology. Local rulers incorporated into Tang protectorate system. Governance integrated Chinese administrative practices gradually. Officials ensured taxation and tribute collected reliably. Integration reduced rebellion while maintaining local identity. Military campaigns secured passes and desert routes. Strategic fortifications prevented nomadic disruption efficiently. Supply chains maintained for merchant caravans continuously. Tang forces ensured uninterrupted flow of goods. Chinese culture spread along trade corridors consistently. Architecture, language, and legal practices adopted locally. Religious ideas like Buddhism expanded through missionary networks. Tang influence shaped societies far beyond core territories. Market towns flourished under Tang oversight systematically. Merchants gained access to distant networks safely. Silk production and trade generated substantial imperial revenue. Economic control strengthened both internal stability and external influence. Knowledge and technology transmitted along Silk Road routes. Astronomy, medicine, and mathematics exchanged with foreign lands. Artistic techniques blended Chinese and Central Asian styles. Cultural enrichment accompanied economic and political expansion. Tang maintained communications via courier stations along route. Information about trade, threats, and diplomacy flowed reliably. Rapid response possible for military or administrative needs. Control over logistics enhanced empire-wide coordination and authority. Tributary states along Silk Road pledged loyalty ceremonially. They provided goods, tribute, and political support. Tang reinforced its hegemony without overextending militarily. Diplomatic and economic influence grew steadily in the region. Local elites benefited from Tang protection and commerce. Urban centers developed administrative, commercial, and religious infrastructure. Prosperity fostered loyalty and integration into imperial system. Empire maintained influence through combination of power and incentives. Tang presence ensured safe passage for Buddhist pilgrims. Monasteries established along trade routes flourished culturally. Religious exchange deepened connections between China and neighbors. Tang influence linked spiritual, economic, and political spheres. Expansion along Silk Road elevated Tang international reputation. Trade, diplomacy, and military oversight projected soft and hard power. Central Asia became an extension of Tang economic and cultural reach. Empire's prestige extended far beyond China's traditional borders. Tang implemented the equal field system strategically. Land divided among households based on family size. Allocation ensured both fairness and productive efficiency. Peasants received sufficient land for subsistence farming. Each family cultivated assigned plots diligently. Harvests contributed to household sustenance and taxation. Officials monitored land use and productivity consistently. Compliance ensured equitable distribution and social stability. System reduced aristocratic monopoly over fertile land. Large estates broken into smaller, manageable plots. Wealthy elites retained land only under strict limits. Peasant households gained security and economic opportunity. Agricultural productivity improved significantly under regulation. Irrigation canals, roads, and storage facilities supported farming. Crop rotation and techniques optimized yields annually. Central oversight ensured proper implementation across provinces. Farmers owed taxes and labor service in exchange. Grain levies collected systematically for imperial use. Labor allocated to public projects, such as canals. Balanced obligations prevented peasants overburdening effectively. Population growth stimulated expansion of cultivable areas. New lands brought under cultivation gradually and carefully. Colonization encouraged settlement in frontier regions. Agricultural expansion reinforced empire's economic foundation. Local officials registered families and plots meticulously. Land registers maintained accurate records for taxation. Transparency reduced corruption and disputes among households. Equal field system became cornerstone of Tang agrarian policy. Peasants encouraged to invest in long-term land care. Improvements such as fertilizers, irrigation, and tools adopted. Higher yields increased food security and tax revenue. Sustained productivity supported urban populations and trade. System promoted social stability and loyalty to emperor. Peasants benefited from predictable obligations and protection. Agricultural prosperity strengthened both state and society. Mandate of heaven legitimized imperial control through fairness. Officials inspected fields regularly for proper cultivation. Non-compliance and harding punished according to law. Local administrators facilitated coordination between peasants and state. Balanced enforcement prevented unrest and maintained harmony. Land inheritance regulated to avoid fragmentation or concentration. Successive generations maintained access while respecting original allocations. System ensured long-term sustainability of productive agricultural base. Population growth matched available cultivated land efficiently. Food surpluses supported military garrisons and urban centers. Granaries stored reserves for famine relief and campaigns. Stable supply chains reinforced empire's economic and strategic power. Agricultural foundation enabled Tang expansion and prosperity. The equal field system integrated taxation, military service, and governance. Centralized oversight connected rural productivity with imperial administration. System remained model for Chinese dynasties long after Tang. Agriculture became backbone of Tang economy and social stability. Tang established state granaries to ensure food security. Grain stored for famine relief and military supply. Reserves distributed systematically during times of scarcity. Central oversight maintained sufficient stocks across the empire. Granary networks connected capital with provincial storage facilities. Roads and canals enabled efficient grain transportation regularly. Officials monitored inventory levels and distribution carefully. Transparency prevented corruption and hoarding in the system. Taxes collected both in grain and cash revenue. Land taxes proportional to size and productivity enforced. Households contributed labor and produce to support state projects. Balanced taxation prevented overburdening peasants while funding government. During poor harvests, grain released to stabilize communities. Food aid reduced peasant suffering and minimized rebellion risk. Local officials coordinated relief with military and civil authorities. Efficient response reinforced public confidence in imperial governance. Granary management supported urban and frontier populations alike. Markets remained supplied even in remote provincial centers. Military garrisons received reliable provisions for defense readiness. Food security allowed economic activity to continue uninterrupted. Taxation policies incentivized productive use of land. Equal field system combined with granary planning harmonized revenue. Officials adjusted levies based on seasonal yields and climate. Policy ensured both fairness and sustainable state funding. Records maintained meticulous account of production, storage, and taxes. Audits conducted regularly to prevent misappropriation of resources. Officials held accountable for shortages or corruption at local level. Transparency reinforced efficiency and legitimacy of government policies. Granaries also facilitated long-distance trade along Silk Road. Excess grain exchanged or transported to support distant markets. Economic stability promoted both domestic and international commerce. Tang's state projected influence through controlled and reliable resources. Monetary taxes gradually complemented grain levies effectively. Cash revenue allowed more flexible funding for administration and projects. Merchants contributed through regulated market taxes systematically. Financial management strengthened central authority while supporting economy. Strategic reserves ensured rapid response to natural disasters. Floods, droughts, and locust infestations mitigated through planning. Emergency relief prevented social unrest and maintained loyalty. Tang granary system became model of effective resource management. Officials trained in granary and tax administration professionally. Record keeping, auditing, and distribution monitored closely. Competent bureaucracy prevented misuse and enhanced long-term stability. State granaries reinforced the backbone of Tang economic power. Stable food supply supported population growth across the empire. Urban expansion sustained by reliable provision and trade networks. Agriculture, taxation, and storage integrated into cohesive system. Tang economy thrived due to prudent resource management and policy. Tang Dynasty expanded trade along the Silk Road. Caravans transported silk, spices, and precious metals. Routes connected China with Central Asia and Persia. Merchants traveled under imperial protection for safety. Tang garrisons secured key passes and desert corridors. Oasis towns became hubs for commerce and rest. Markets flourished along the route consistently. Trade stimulated both local economies and imperial revenue. Foreign envoys visited China to exchange goods. Silk and porcelain highly valued in distant lands. Tang received horses, gems, and exotic commodities. Mutual exchange strengthened both economic and diplomatic ties. Merchants formed guilds and associations to organize trade. Contracts and agreements standardized commercial practices effectively. Caravans operated with reliable schedules and security measures. Efficient operations reduced losses from bandits and natural hazards. Cultural exchange accompanied economic interactions extensively. Buddhism, art, and technology spread along trade networks. Foreign crafts and knowledge influenced Chinese society. Tang cities benefited from enriched cultural and commercial diversity. Taxes collected on traded goods supported imperial treasury. Customs stations regulated market activity and levies systematically. Revenue funded infrastructure, military, and administrative needs. Economic planning ensured sustainable growth from commerce. Silk Road trade encouraged urban growth along routes. Merchants, artisans, and laborers settled in thriving towns. Prosperity supported local industries and food markets. Integration strengthened both regional and central economies. Tang encouraged long-distance maritime trade additionally. Ports connected China with Southeast Asia and India. Sea and land trade complemented each other efficiently. Merchants benefited from diversified routes and trading opportunities. Road safety and infrastructure improvements promoted steady commerce. Bridges, roads, and canals facilitated rapid and reliable transport. Caravans could traverse deserts, mountains, and rivers efficiently. Empire maintained logistical control to protect trade integrity. Diplomacy ensured passage through foreign territories safely. Tributary states permitted movement of Chinese merchants. Alliances fostered cooperation rather than conflict over trade. Tang influence extended through both commerce and soft power. Trade wealth fueled luxury goods production in the capital. Silk weaving, ceramics, and metalwork reached high standards. Artisans received high demand from domestic and foreign markets. Economic prosperity reinforced imperial prestige and political stability. Tang actively monitored foreign merchants for regulation. Customs offices oversaw transactions and collected duties fairly. Record-keeping tracked imported and exported goods consistently. System prevented smuggling and ensured legal trade compliance. Caravans linked Chang'an with distant cities reliably. Goods, news, and culture flowed steadily along the road. Trade networks integrated the empire internally and externally. Silk Road remained vital for Tang economic and political power. Tang capital Chang'an attracted merchants from across Asia. Persians, Indians, Arabs, and Central Asians settled locally. Foreign traders operated in designated commercial districts efficiently. Cultural diversity enriched city life and economic activity. Merchants brought exotic goods and luxury items frequently. Spices, textiles, gems, and perfumes entered local markets. Trade increased wealth for both merchants and state. Tang economy thrived from domestic and international commerce. Embassies and merchant delegations fostered diplomatic connections. Foreign traders sometimes served as informal envoys abroad. Cultural exchange accompanied commercial interactions consistently. Language, customs, and knowledge integrated into urban society. Foreigners contributed to cosmopolitan character of Chang'an. Markets showcased diverse foods, clothing, and entertainment. Artistic styles blended Chinese and foreign influences creatively. Cultural tolerance reinforced stability and prosperity in capital. Merchants adhered to imperial regulations and customs laws. Customs offices collected tariffs on imported merchandise systematically. Licenses regulated market activities to ensure fair competition. State maintained oversight without stifling trade opportunities. Foreign communities often established temples and meeting halls. Religious practices like Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and Nestorian Christianity flourished. Intermarriage and social interaction integrated traders into local life. Tang promoted harmony among diverse ethnic and religious groups. Banking and credit systems developed to facilitate commerce. Letters of credit and informal loans supported long-distance trade. Merchants trusted city infrastructure for secure transactions. Financial innovation strengthened both local and imperial economy. Chang'an's urban planning accommodated merchant activities carefully. Streets and marketplaces designed for efficient movement of goods. Warehouses and caravanserais provided storage and lodging. Infrastructure supported both domestic trade and Silk Road commerce. Foreign artisans introduced crafts and manufacturing techniques. Ceramics, metalwork, and textiles improved through new methods. Tang artisans adapted foreign designs for domestic consumption. Exchange enhanced innovation across multiple economic sectors. Imperial patronage supported market growth and foreign presence. Emperor and officials ensured security and fair practices. Public celebrations often included merchants and their cultural contributions. Urban prosperity relied on cooperation between locals and foreigners. Trade contributed to social mobility and employment opportunities. Merchants, laborers, and artisans benefited from city expansion. Foreign merchants integrated into guilds and business networks. Economic interdependence reinforced Chang'an's importance as a hub. Diplomatic protection encouraged confidence in commercial ventures. Merchants felt safe traveling and investing under Tang authority. Stability attracted more traders, enhancing city vibrancy. Chang'an became economic, cultural, and diplomatic center globally. City wealth fueled luxury production and artistic patronage. Imperial workshops and private markets benefited from foreign demand. Cultural and economic exchange strengthened Tang's soft power. Chang'an thrived as capital of a globally connected empire. Tang cities experienced unprecedented growth and prosperity. Chang'an and Luoyang became major population centers. Urban markets thrived with food, goods, and services. Merchants, artisans, and officials fueled bustling economies. Craftsmen produced silk, ceramics, and metalwork efficiently. Workshops expanded to meet domestic and foreign demand. Luxury goods sold locally and exported via Silk Road. Artisan skills elevated Tang cultural and economic prestige. Trade fairs attracted merchants from across the empire. Caravans brought exotic spices, textiles, and precious metals. Markets operated year-round with regulated pricing systems. Commerce became a central feature of urban life. Infrastructure supported dense urban populations strategically. Roads, canals, and bridges connected markets and residential areas. Water supply, sanitation, and granaries maintained public health. Urban planning promoted both safety and economic activity. Banks and moneylenders facilitated credit and investment. Letters of credit enabled long-distance trade efficiently. Financial systems supported both domestic commerce and Silk Road operations. Economic sophistication enhanced Tang governance and stability. Population growth fueled demand for goods and services. Food markets expanded alongside markets for crafts and textiles. Entertainment, restaurants, and inns flourished in city districts. Urban life became vibrant, diverse, and economically dynamic. Government oversight maintained order and supported growth. Market regulations ensured fair trade and reduced fraud. Taxes collected efficiently from urban commerce sustained administration. Public projects funded by commerce reinforced infrastructure reliability. Foreign merchants contributed to cultural and economic diversity. Exchange of goods introduced new tastes, styles, and technologies. Cosmopolitan urban centers became hubs of innovation and creativity. Tong cities thrived as international trade and cultural crossroads. Art and culture flourished alongside economic expansion. Poets, painters, and performers benefited from wealthy patrons. Urban wealth financed temples, academies, and public works. Cultural investment reinforced Tong's soft power and social cohesion. Trade networks connected urban centers to rural production. Agricultural surpluses supplied growing populations reliably. Artisans converted raw materials into finished goods efficiently. Integration of production, commerce, and governance sustained prosperity. Population density promoted social interactions and professional specialization. Guilds, apprenticeships, and merchant networks structured economic life. Knowledge and skills transmitted across generations systematically. Urban centers became engines of Tong economic strength. Economic prosperity supported military and administrative ambitions. Revenue financed garrisons, infrastructure, and imperial projects. Stable cities allowed expansion of Tong influence regionally. Urban boom underpinned empire's long-term political and economic stability. Tong urban centers showcased empire's wealth and sophistication. Markets, workshops, and cultural institutions thrived harmoniously. Cities became centers of trade, governance, and learning. Tong economy reached unprecedented levels of productivity and influence. Tong China welcomed peoples from across Asia. Persians, Turks, Koreans, and Central Asians settled. Merchants, artisans, and diplomats mingled in cities. Chang'an became center of cultural and commercial exchange. Foreign communities lived in designated urban quarters. Neighborhoods reflected ethnic and religious diversity systematically. Languages, customs, and cuisines blended into daily life. Cosmopolitanism strengthened social tolerance and civic order. Trade attracted diverse travelers and permanent residents. Silk Road facilitated movement of goods and peoples. Caravans carried not only merchandise, but also ideas. Cultural exchange spread religion, fashion, and knowledge widely. Integration of foreigners enhanced local economic activity. Merchants introduced new crafts and production techniques. Artisans adopted exotic designs and blended styles creatively. Innovation flourished as different traditions interacted seamlessly. Government promoted tolerance and managed diversity carefully. Officials ensured foreign communities respected local laws. Tributary leaders settled peacefully under imperial oversight. Administrative integration minimized social conflict and unrest effectively. Religious pluralism accompanied cosmopolitan settlements actively. Buddhists, Taoists, Christians, and Zoroastrians coexisted. Temples and shrines catered to diverse spiritual practices. Interfaith interaction enriched Tong religious and cultural life. Elite families married across ethnic boundaries occasionally. Intermarriage facilitated social integration and political alliances. Foreign merchants gained acceptance through economic contribution. Social mobility reflected both merit and cultural assimilation. Urban festivals showcased multicultural influences throughout the city. Music, dance, and theatrical performances displayed exotic elements. Public celebrations included rituals from multiple traditions simultaneously. Cosmopolitanism manifested in both daily life and official events. Cultural knowledge transferred through education and personal interaction. Foreign scholars contributed scientific, medical, and astronomical knowledge. Intellectual exchange enhanced Tong scholarship and technological advancement. Cities became centers of learning and cultural synthesis. Cosmopolitan society influenced fashion and culinary traditions visibly. Clothing styles adopted from Persia and Central Asia. Spices and cooking techniques diversified urban diets substantially. Cultural blending created unique Tong lifestyle expressions. Government tolerated foreign businesses and trade guilds formally. Merchants regulated yet encouraged, allowed prosperity and innovation. Economic integration reinforced peaceful coexistence and civic loyalty. Cosmopolitanism contributed to social stability and prosperity effectively. Artisans and craftsmen adapted diverse motifs and techniques. Architecture, textiles, and metalwork reflected multicultural inspiration. Workshops trained locals and foreigners in combined crafts. Cultural synthesis strengthened both aesthetic and economic output. Cosmopolitan society fostered curiosity and intellectual openness. People exchanged stories, traditions, and philosophical ideas daily. Scholars debated foreign and domestic knowledge collaboratively. Tang society encouraged learning, travel, and exploration actively. Tang cosmopolitanism reinforced imperial legitimacy and soft power. Diverse communities accepted central authority while contributing culturally. Trade, diplomacy, and migration created vibrant urban centers. Empire projected strength through inclusion and cultural sophistication. Tang Dynasty witnessed remarkable growth in poetry. Poets expressed nature, politics, and personal reflection. Li Bai and Du Fu became celebrated literary figures. Poetic works celebrated by both court and commoners. Art flourished in painting, calligraphy, and sculpture. Artists depicted landscapes, court life, and religious themes. Ink, silk, and paper mediums used creatively. Styles combined technical skill with expressive beauty. Poetry often accompanied painting in integrated works. Calligraphy considered both art and scholarly pursuit. Scholars practiced brush techniques for aesthetics and meaning. Artistic expression reflected philosophical and moral principles. Patrons supported literary and artistic production generously. Emperors, aristocrats, and wealthy families commissioned works. Scholar officials cultivated personal collections of poetry and art. Cultural patronage elevated both status and creative output. Religious themes prominent in Tang artwork prominently. Buddhist murals, Taoist icons, and temple decorations abundant. Artists blended traditional Chinese and foreign stylistic elements. Cultural exchange enriched artistic diversity and expression. Court poetry celebrated political achievements and imperial virtues. Emperors sometimes composed poems themselves personally. Poetic salons encouraged debate, composition, and critique. Literature became a medium for both art and influence. Urban centers hosted public displays of artistic achievements. Markets sold paintings, scrolls, and calligraphy widely. Performance arts combined music, dance, and visual storytelling. Cultural festivals highlighted poetry alongside theatrical performances. Poetic forms varied, including regulated verse and ballads. Themes ranged from friendship, loyalty, and love to nature. Symbolism and metaphor conveyed moral and philosophical messages. Tang poetry influenced subsequent Chinese literature profoundly. Artists traveled to acquire inspiration from mountains and rivers. Natural landscapes depicted with intricate detail and expressive brushwork. Seasonal changes and atmospheric conditions captured skillfully. Art emphasized harmony between humans and nature. Scholar artists often served as civil officials simultaneously. Their works reflected refined taste, ethical ideals, and sophistication. Art and literature promoted personal cultivation and societal ideals. Creative excellence became central to elite cultural identity. Tang artwork included ceramics, bronzes, and lacquerware. Functional objects also crafted with aesthetic refinement carefully. Innovation in techniques and materials advanced artistic sophistication. Craftsmanship elevated mundane objects into cultural symbols. Calligraphy remained a prestigious art form among literati. Styles conveyed personality, intellect, and moral character. Students trained under masters to refine brushwork. Artistic skill measured both talent and disciplined study. Patronage encouraged experimentation and fusion of styles. Chinese techniques merged with Central Asian and Persian influences. Artistic exchange broadened aesthetic horizons and enriched creativity. Tang art symbolized cultural openness and imperial sophistication. Publications and anthologies preserved literary and artistic achievements. Scrolls, manuscripts, and prints circulated among literati. Cultural transmission ensured influence across generations and regions. Tang Dynasty became a benchmark for artistic excellence. Buddhism flourished widely under Tang imperial patronage. Monasteries built in cities, mountains, and frontier regions. Monks translated scriptures and taught local populations. Temples became centers of education, art, and charity. Taoism also gained prominence alongside Buddhism. Priests advised emperors on rituals and state ceremonies. Taoist temples integrated philosophy, meditation, and local cults. Spiritual practices influenced both elite and commoner lifestyles. Tang emperors promoted religious tolerance actively. Both Buddhism and Taoism received official recognition. Religious diversity reinforced social cohesion and imperial legitimacy. Communities participated freely in festivals, rituals, and teachings. Monks and Taoist priests traveled widely across China. Missionaries spread doctrines to frontier regions and abroad. Texts and ideas disseminated along trade and pilgrimage routes. Cultural exchange enriched both religious and artistic expression. Buddhist art and architecture reached remarkable sophistication. Murals, statues, and pagodas decorated temples and caves. Influences included Indian, Central Asian, and local styles. Art reinforced religious teachings and imperial prestige simultaneously. Taoist ritual practices incorporated music, dance, and meditation. Ceremonies often coincided with seasonal and agricultural festivals. Astrology and cosmology guided state rituals and decision-making. Religion intertwined closely with governance and social order. Monastic communities contributed to education and literacy. Schools attached to temples taught language, philosophy, and science. Scholar monks participated in scholarly debates and public discourse. Religious institutions became centers of knowledge and learning. Religious pilgrimage attracted devotees from across the empire. Sacred sites fostered economic activity and cultural exchange. Caravans and travelers supported markets near temples. Pilgrimage routes strengthened both social networks and commerce. Buddhist philosophy influenced literature, poetry, and ethics. Monks wrote commentaries and guided moral conduct publicly. Taoist ideals shaped artistic motifs and cultural practices. Religion permeated daily life and imperial ceremonial culture. State sponsorship allowed large-scale temple construction projects. Granaries, labor, and artisans provided infrastructure for sacred sites. Monuments symbolized both spiritual devotion and imperial authority. Architecture reinforced the connection between heaven, emperor, and people. Tang rulers mediated disputes among religious groups carefully. Tolerance policies prevented sectarian conflicts and uprisings. Integration promoted loyalty and participation across diverse communities. Religion reinforced cultural cohesion and imperial stability effectively. Buddhist monasteries supported charitable activities consistently. Food, medicine, and shelter provided to the needy regularly. Monastic networks assisted government during crises and disasters. Religious institutions complemented the administrative and social structure. Taoist alchemy and medicine developed alongside spiritual practice. Health and longevity studies attracted intellectual and elite attention. Practical and philosophical Taoist teachings influenced Tang society. Religion intertwined scientific, philosophical, and spiritual dimensions. Tang religious spread extended beyond China significantly. Missionaries reached Central Asia, Korea, and Japan effectively. Buddhism and Taoism influenced art, culture, and governance abroad. Tong became a hub of religious exchange and cosmopolitan spirituality. Tong aristocrats and officials supported scholars generously. Scholar officials received funding for study and literary work. Academies and libraries flourished under private and imperial sponsorship. Elite patronage promoted intellectual and cultural development consistently. Monks benefited from donations and land grants regularly. Monasteries expanded with wealthy families' financial support. Religious institutions gained resources for construction and teaching. Patrons ensured both spiritual and educational missions thrived. Poets, calligraphers, and artists received elite commissions. Court-sponsored projects produced murals, sculptures, and manuscripts. Literary salons offered venues for critique and collaboration. Patronage elevated artists' social status and influence publicly. Scholar officials advised emperors on policy and governance. Their expertise integrated philosophy, history, and law into decisions. Elite support allowed sustained study and innovation. Knowledge production became closely linked with social prestige. Monks contributed to translation of Buddhist and Taoist texts. Elite funding enabled large-scale copying and dissemination. Texts reached frontier regions, urban centers, and foreign lands. Cultural and religious knowledge expanded through systematic patronage. Philosophers and teachers taught both elite and commoner students. Education included Confucian classics, history, and moral instruction. Patronage reinforced social hierarchy and cultivated loyal officials. Learning became a vehicle for both personal advancement and state service. Elite families hosted gatherings for poetry, debate, and performance. Cultural salons fostered interaction between scholars, monks, and officials. Creative work became central to social and political networks. Patronage strengthened ties between intellectuals and governing class. Monastic and scholarly communities collaborated on artistic projects. Temple murals, calligraphy scrolls, and literature combined religious and secular themes. Elite support encouraged innovative synthesis of tradition and creativity. Cultural flourishing reflected both intellectual and material aims. Imperial family and high officials rewarded excellence publicly. Recognition included titles, gifts, and ceremonial honors. Motivated further scholarship, artistry, and religious dedication. Public acknowledgement reinforced meritocratic and moral ideals. Elite patronage extended to medical and scientific knowledge. Monks and scholars studied astronomy, medicine, and geography. Support enabled research, documentation, and practical application. Knowledge circulated across the empire, enhancing state capability. Education and religion intertwined through elite sponsorship consistently. Temples often served as centers of learning for a broader society. Scholars contributed to moral and administrative guidance. Patronage ensured intellectual production aligned with Tang governance. Artistic workshops benefited from elite commissions and resources. Craftsmen produced ceramics, textiles, and decorative art at scale. Innovations introduced new techniques while preserving cultural heritage. Economic and cultural investment reinforced elite influence in society. Literary anthologies and historical texts compiled with patron support. Tang historiography and poetry preserved for future generations. Elite sponsorship ensured continuity of knowledge and tradition. Patronage created lasting cultural and intellectual legacy. Tang elite cultivated loyalty through cultural and religious investment. Support of scholars and monks linked morality, governance, and prestige. Cultural production reinforced imperial ideology and social cohesion. Elite patronage became cornerstone of Tang society and civilization. Tang society witnessed vibrant growth in fashion trends. Clothing reflected rank, status, and cultural influences. Silk robes, embroidered patterns, and layered garments popular. Colors, textures, and accessories signified social and official rank. Foreign styles influenced urban attire significantly. Persian, Central Asian, and Korean elements integrated seamlessly. Women wore flowing dresses with delicate embroidery. Men adopted tunics, sashes, and decorative headwear. Hairstyles became elaborate symbols of elegance and taste. Women decorated hair with pins, ornaments, and flowers. Men styled hair in top knots or hats appropriately. Fashion expressed identity, refinement, and social position. Music thrived in courts, temples, and public performances. Tang musicians performed string, wind, and percussion instruments. Guqin, pipa, and flutes featured prominently in compositions. Dance accompanied musical performances in both formal and festive settings. Court patronage encouraged professional musicians and composers. Imperial ensembles performed during ceremonies and banquets regularly. Music codified ritual, entertainment, and storytelling traditions. Tang emperors themselves sometimes participated in musical performances. Urban festivals showcased both local and foreign music styles. Central Asian and Persian melodies influenced Chinese compositions. Dancers wore exotic costumes and performed intricate choreography. Cultural exchange enriched the variety and complexity of performances. Opera and theatrical performances became popular among city dwellers. Actors, singers, and musicians collaborated on dramatic spectacles. Storytelling, dance, and music blended for immersive entertainment. Tang audiences appreciated both narrative and aesthetic artistry. Fashion and music reinforced social hierarchy and etiquette. Clothing and performance indicated social role and moral values. Ritual music educated elites about Confucian and ceremonial ideals. Artistic expression shaped both civic and cultural identity. Instruments were refined and new ones introduced creatively. Drums, bells, and stringed instruments used in ceremonial contexts. Musical notation developed for performance and teaching purposes. Tang innovation influenced subsequent Chinese musical traditions significantly. Artists and musicians traveled to perform in multiple regions. Cultural transmission expanded Tang influence across provinces. Foreign performers integrated into local artistic communities. Urban centers became hubs for creativity and innovation. Women played active roles in music and performance arts. Singer-dancers entertained at court and private gatherings. Fashion and music intertwined in public and religious events. Expression reflected both aesthetic refinement and social communication. Musical education was promoted among elite and scholars. Schools trained students in instruments, composition, and theory. Patronage ensured continued cultivation of sophisticated musical skills. Cultural sophistication reinforced social cohesion and imperial prestige. Tang Dynasty became renowned for elegance, style, and artistry. Fashion and music symbolized cosmopolitanism and imperial sophistication. Artistic expression reflected wealth, power, and cultural openness. Tang culture remained influential long after the dynasty's decline. Tang Dynasty pioneered important printing innovations. Woodblock printing became widely used for texts. Techniques allowed reproduction of religious and scholarly works. Printing expanded access to knowledge across the empire. Monks and scholars copied sutras and classics efficiently. Woodblocks carved with precision ensured accurate duplication. Multiple copies produced for temples, schools, and officials. Knowledge dissemination accelerated through systematic replication. Paper quality improved to support repeated printing processes. Ink formulation standardized for consistency and durability. Printing materials became more affordable and accessible. Education and literacy benefited significantly from these advancements. Printing facilitated spread of Buddhist texts widely. Sutras copied and distributed to monasteries and communities. Religious teachings reached frontier regions effectively. Monastic networks supported both spiritual and educational growth. Secular works, including poetry and history, printed increasingly. Official records, administrative manuals, and literature reproduced systematically. Wider circulation enhanced cultural cohesion and intellectual exchange. Printing bridged geographic and social distances within the empire. Technique innovations allowed mass production without manual copying. Carving precise characters on wood required skilled artisans. Artisans trained in calligraphy and block preparation professionally. Collaboration ensured both aesthetic quality and textual accuracy. Government encouraged printing for educational purposes actively. Imperial libraries housed multiple copies of classics. Officials used printed texts to standardize administration and law. Systematic reproduction improved bureaucratic efficiency across provinces. Printing contributed to preservation of knowledge for future generations. Texts that might have been lost survived in multiple editions. Historical records, literature, and religious scriptures safeguarded. Tang innovations became foundation for a future printing technology. Buddhist printing projects sometimes involved hundreds of blocks. Temples coordinated labor to carve, ink, and press pages. Devotional activities combined with practical knowledge dissemination. Religious and educational aims reinforced each other effectively. Printing also enabled innovation in artistic and decorative techniques. Illustrations incorporated into texts enhanced understanding and appeal. Calligraphy styles adapted to woodblock format skillfully. Tang printing blended utility, education, and aesthetic value. Knowledge reached a broader audience beyond elite scholars. Urban centers and provincial towns accessed printed works. Literacy promoted among officials, students, and merchants systematically. Cultural participation extended beyond privileged classes gradually. Printing strengthened Tang intellectual and cultural influence abroad. Copies of texts carried a long Silk Road to neighboring regions. Foreign monks and scholars studied Tang works extensively. Technological transfer influenced East Asian education and culture. Standardization of texts ensured accuracy and consistency. Errors reduced compared to handwritten manuscripts significantly. Scholarly consensus maintained through multiple editions and careful review. Tang printing exemplified innovation, precision, and knowledge preservation. Tang Dynasty's printing advancements laid groundwork for future developments. Song Dynasty and later dynasties built upon Tang techniques. Technological continuity reinforced both intellectual and cultural growth. Printing became central to education, religion, and governance. Tang Dynasty advanced both medicine and astronomy significantly. Medical texts compiled, studied, and disseminated widely. Physicians practiced herbal remedies, acupuncture, and moxibustion. Healthcare knowledge preserved and standardized for broader use. Imperial hospitals provided treatment for officials and commoners. Medical training integrated theory, observation, and practical application. Monks and scholars contributed to pharmacology and surgery. Collaboration ensured accurate diagnosis and effective therapy consistently. Herbal compendiums, such as the Tang Materia Medica, compiled carefully. Thousands of plants, minerals, and animal products documented. Uses, preparation methods, and dosages recorded systematically. Reference works facilitated accurate treatment across the empire. Astronomy flourished under imperial sponsorship and scholarly study. Observatories constructed in major cities, including Chang'an. Star charts, calendars, and planetary tables produced meticulously. Accurate celestial observation guided agriculture, rituals, and governance. Calendar reform standardized lunar and solar calculations precisely. Astronomers calculated intercalary months and eclipses reliably. Seasonal changes predicted for farming and ceremonial planning. Science integrated with daily life and state administration seamlessly. Medical education emphasized empirical observation and recorded experience. Apprentices trained under experienced practitioners for practical expertise. Knowledge transmitted through texts, lectures, and demonstrations consistently. Tang medicine balanced theoretical principles with effective treatment. Astronomy also guided astrology, divination, and ritual timing. Imperial advisors relied on observations for state decisions. Accurate celestial knowledge reinforced legitimacy of imperial authority. Science intertwined with governance, religion, and social organization. Pharmacology research expanded trade in medicinal herbs extensively. Exotic ingredients imported from Central Asia and India. Medical commerce stimulated economy while enhancing healthcare options. Tang hospitals and apothecaries distributed remedies efficiently. Public health measures promoted disease prevention actively. Quarantine, hygiene, and dietary guidance implemented by local officials. Medical texts encouraged personal care and preventive practices. Community health initiatives improved longevity and societal stability. Astronomical instruments included armillary spheres, gnomons, and clepsydras. Tools allowed precise measurement of time, celestial angles, and motion. Instruments enhanced both practical applications and scholarly research. Tang innovations influenced later Chinese and East Asian astronomy. Integration of medicine and astronomy supported elite and common life. Doctors and astrologers served court, military, and civilian populations. Tang scientific achievements improved daily life and state capacity. Practical knowledge strengthened both imperial administration and public welfare. Tang Dynasty became a center for scientific collaboration systematically. Scholars studied, recorded, and taught across multiple disciplines. Innovation, observation, and documentation fostered technological and intellectual progress. Medicine and astronomy exemplified Tang commitment to practical know. Tang Dynasty pioneered woodblock printing for literature. Texts reproduced efficiently for religious and secular purposes. Buddhist sutras, Confucian classics, and poetry widely circulated. Printing allowed scholars, monks, and students broader access. Woodblocks carved with precision preserved textual accuracy. Artisans trained in calligraphy and engraving maintained quality. Multiple copies produced rapidly without manual transcription errors. Distribution facilitated education, administration, and religious study. Secular literature flourished, including poetry and historical records. Stories, philosophical works, and official documents printed systematically. Mass production enhanced preservation and dissemination of knowledge. Intellectual life expanded beyond elites to wider audiences. Illustrated texts gained popularity for educational and aesthetic purposes. Woodblock technique incorporated images alongside written characters. Books became tools for learning, devotion, and cultural appreciation. Visual elements complemented textual content for enhanced comprehension. Printing encouraged standardization of language and script forms. Consistency reinforced in both scholarly and administrative documents. Tang literature spread with reduced regional variation effectively. Textual uniformity improved communication across the empire. Monasteries played a key role in woodblock production actively. Scribes, monks, and artisans collaborated on religious texts. Copies sent to frontier regions and foreign lands efficiently. Printing facilitated spiritual and cultural influence abroad. Woodblock books became affordable and accessible gradually. Scholars, officials, and literate commoners obtained texts more easily. Education expanded, promoting literacy and cultural participation. Knowledge dissemination strengthened imperial authority and social cohesion. Poetry anthologies, historical chronicles, and philosophical works printed. Cultural transmission ensured continuity across generations and provinces. Woodblock literature preserved Tang intellectual and artistic achievements. Printing became a central instrument of education and governance. Tang innovation influenced later dynasties, including Song and Ming. Printing technology refined, expanded, and applied more broadly. East Asian literary culture benefited from Tang foundational techniques. Woodblock printing became cornerstone of textual production in China. Mass production of texts reduced reliance on manual copying. Errors minimized while efficiency and reach increased substantially. Literary and religious knowledge reached monasteries, schools, and families. Printing strengthened both educational and religious infrastructure systematically. Illustrations, annotations, and commentaries integrated with printed texts. Readers engaged with works interactively through text and visual cues. Woodblock printing supported scholarship, devotion, and aesthetic enjoyment. Tang texts influenced philosophy, literature, and administration for centuries. Imperial support encouraged large-scale printing projects actively. Funding, labor, and materials ensured sustained production of texts. State and religious collaboration forced both authority and cultural dissemination. Woodblock printing became emblem of Tang innovation and knowledge preservation. Tang Dynasty developed remarkable architectural techniques systematically. Palaces, temples, and pagodas reflected both function and beauty. Timber frame construction emphasized balance, flexibility, and seismic resistance. Designs integrated aesthetic principles with practical durability effectively. Imperial palaces showcased symmetry, grand halls, and ceremonial courtyards. Chang'an and Luoyang featured planned city layouts and monumental gates. Urban planning reflected both political ideology and social order. Public buildings demonstrated imperial authority and cultural sophistication visibly. Pagodas constructed for religious purposes displayed artistic innovation. Multi-storage structures built with timber, brick, and stone materials. Buddhist relics preserved inside, attracting pilgrims and devotion. Architecture harmonized spiritual significance with structural ingenuity. Roofing techniques emphasized curvature and elegance carefully. Flying eaves, decorative brackets, and tiling enhanced visual appeal. Structural stability maintained through intricate joinery and supports. Tang craftsmanship combined artistry with engineering knowledge meticulously. Bridges and canals improved transportation and urban infrastructure. Stone and wooden bridges facilitated trade and connectivity efficiently. Water management integrated with city planning for irrigation and commerce. Engineering projects reflected both utility and imperial oversight consistently. Decorative elements included carved reliefs, painted murals, and sculptures. Artistry reflected religious, literary, and political themes simultaneously. Symbolism reinforced imperial ideology and moral principles clearly. Visual storytelling conveyed cultural values to elite and commoner audiences. Residential architecture adapted to climate, social status, and aesthetics. Courtyard homes provided ventilation, light, and communal spaces. Elites lived in spacious, ornate residences, while commoners had modest housing. Urban and rural architecture reflected both function and cultural identity. Monastic complexes integrated living, teaching, and devotional spaces. Temples designed to accommodate large communities and pilgrims efficiently. Buddhist architecture blended local styles with imported Central Asian influences. Tang innovation fostered architectural experimentation and cross-cultural. Fortifications, walls, and watchtower strengthened city and frontier defense. Stone and timber construction ensured durability against attack and weather. Military architecture coordinated with strategic planning and garrison placement. Tang combined functionality with symbolic representation of imperial tombs reflected cosmology, hierarchy, and monumental scale. Spacious complexes incorporated statues, inscriptions, and elaborate layouts. Design reinforced dynastic legitimacy and honored ancestor veneration practices. Architecture became a medium of both political and cultural expression. Urban planning included streets, gates, marketplaces, and administrative buildings. Orderly layouts facilitated governance, trade, and civic life efficiently. Standardization reflected centralized planning and control over large populations. Tang cities became models of organization, aesthetics, and Fu. Architectural techniques influenced later dynasties and neighboring regions. Pagoda and palace designs inspired Song, Ming, and East Asian styles. Tang innovation integrated structural knowledge, aesthetics, and cultural meaning. Legacy of Tang architecture remained influential for centuries. Tang Dynasty actively promoted cultural exchange internationally. Ambassadors, merchants, and scholars traveled to distant lands. Foreigners visited China bringing knowledge, art, and religious ideas. Chang'an became a hub of cosmopolitan interaction. Consistently, Silk Road facilitated trade, diplomacy, and intellectual exchange. Goods, texts, and technologies moved between China and neighbors. Central Asia, Persia, India, and Korea connected through commerce. Cultural and economic ties strengthened regional influence systematically. Buddhism spread from India to China through missionaries. Monks translated sutras and built monasteries along trade routes. Religious, artistic, and literary traditions blended across regions. Tang Empire became a center of spiritual and cultural diffusion. Artists and craftsmen exchanged techniques and materials widely. Painting, sculpture, and ceramics incorporated foreign motifs. Textiles and decorative arts reflected Central Asian and Persian styles. Tang culture absorbed influences while maintaining distinct Chinese identity. Diplomacy encouraged learning and adaptation of foreign knowledge. Astronomy, medicine, and mathematics introduced by visiting scholars. Scientific collaboration advanced practical applications and theoretical understanding. Tang intellectual life benefited from diverse global perspectives. Musical and performance traditions enriched urban and court life. Instruments, melodies, and dances introduced by foreigners adopted. Cultural festivals integrated foreign artistic and ceremonial elements. Exchange enhanced both entertainment and elite education simultaneously. Foreign merchants brought new foods, spices, and culinary techniques. Chang'an markets offered exotic ingredients for elite and public consumption. Cultural tastes expanded, reflecting cosmopolitan society and trade wealth. Food became both economic commodity and marker of social status. Diplomatic marriages and alliances strengthened political and cultural ties. Princesses and envoys traveled to neighboring states strategically. Political connections facilitated mutual respect and long-term stability. Tang influence extended beyond borders through soft power effectively. Technologies such as printing, metallurgy, and textile techniques transferred mutually. Chinese innovations reached Central Asia, Korea, and Japan efficiently. Tang adopted useful foreign methods for practical and artistic purposes. Cultural and technological exchange enriched both domestic and foreign. Religious ideas traveled with trade and diplomatic missions consistently. Nestorian Christianity, Zoroastrianism, and Manichaeism introduced diverse belief systems. Buddhism and Taoism integrated foreign elements into local practices. Religious tolerance allowed multiple faiths to flourish simultaneously. Tang elite sponsored scholars and artists from abroad actively. Workshops, schools, and monasteries welcomed foreign expertise. Cross-cultural collaboration fostered innovation in art, literature, and science. Tang Dynasty became center of knowledge, creativity, and influence. Urban centers thrived as hubs of international interaction. Caravans, diplomats, and pilgrims contributed to city vibrancy. Multiculturalism enhanced cosmopolitan identity and cultural sophistication. Tang cities exemplified integration of domestic and global exchange. Cultural exchanges strengthened trade networks and diplomatic relationships. Mutual understanding promoted peace, commerce, and learning simultaneously. Tang Empire projected power through both material and intellectual influence. Regional connections reinforced Tang dominance and prestige across Asia. Tang legacy persisted through diffusion of art, religion, and knowledge. Neighboring regions adopted Chinese techniques, styles, and ideas. Influence extended to Korea, Japan, Central Asia, and beyond. Cultural exchange became hallmark of Tang international sophistication. Noble women held significant influence in Tang society. Elite families relied on women for political alliances. Marriage, kinship, and court presence shaped family power. Women often advised fathers, husbands, and sons strategically. Noble women managed estates and supervised household affairs. Land, wealth, and labor fell under their daily oversight. Effective management ensured family prosperity and social stability. Their economic role reinforced status and influence in society. Education for elite women included literature, poetry, and calligraphy. Cultured women composed poetry and hosted literary salons. Intellectual refinement enhanced prestige and participation in politics. Talented women contributed to cultural as well as social life. Noble women participated in religious and charitable activities actively. Patronage of temples, monasteries, and public works was common. Support of Buddhist or Taoist institutions elevated status publicly. Philanthropy became a channel for influence and social recognition. Court presence allowed noble women to influence political decision-making. Informal advice and personal networks shaped policies subtly. Relationships with emperors and high officials created power channels. Women wielded influence behind the scenes effectively. Elite families used daughters to forge strategic alliances. Marriage connected clans and reinforced political and economic ties. Women's choices impacted succession, diplomacy, and regional influence. Social and familial roles intertwined with political strategies carefully. Fashion, etiquette, and ceremonial participation reflected noble women's power. Public and private appearances conveyed status, taste, and authority. Women's presence at rituals reinforced family prestige and social hierarchy. Appearance and decorum became tools for influence and diplomacy. Noble women sometimes acted as cultural mediators between courts. They introduced customs, art, and literary trends from other regions. Cosmopolitan influence reinforced the elite's social and cultural authority. Women helped shape Tang society through cultural as well as political means. Poetry and literature written by noble women influenced elite culture. Their works circulated in salons and inspired intellectual discourse. Women expressed personal, philosophical, and political ideas creatively. Literary talent became a form of soft power and social leverage. Noble women sometimes supervised tutors and educated children carefully. Instruction in classics, morals, and strategy extended family influence. They ensured continuity of knowledge and preparation for public service. Education reinforced elite dominance across generations. Religious devotion also enhanced women's social standing significantly. Participation in temple rituals and patronage demonstrated piety publicly. Charitable acts, ceremonies, and temple building reinforced moral authority. Spiritual engagement intertwined with social and political influence. Elite women influenced court etiquette and ceremonial practice. They guided rituals, seating arrangements, and protocol at banquets. Such roles reinforced imperial hierarchy and political stability carefully. Women acted as arbiters of refinement and propriety effectively. Noble women occasionally served as advisors or regents during crises. Their judgment and connections could stabilize succession and governance. Political acumen balanced with cultural refinement ensured respect and power. Women wielded authority discreetly yet significantly within elite networks. Tang noble women demonstrated both independence and loyalty. They navigated social constraints, while exerting influence on family and court. Balance of personal talent, intellect, and strategic relationships enhanced authority. Women's role was essential in maintaining Tong's social and political order. Tong court was center of complex politics consistently. Emperors, ministers, and nobles competed for influence daily. Factional rivalries shaped decisions, appointments, and policies subtly. Alliances and enmities determined power distribution in court. Officials sought favor through service, gifts, and flattery. Strategic marriages strengthened positions and family networks effectively. Loyalty and betrayal influenced promotions, demotions, and dismissals regularly. Court factions formed around shared interests and political goals. Women played significant roles in court intrigue actively. Empresses, concubines, and noble women mediated rivalries privately. Advice, persuasion, and rumor influenced emperors' decisions carefully. Informal channels often wielded more power than official posts. Plots and conspiracies occasionally threatened stability seriously. Assassinations, forced retirements, and accusations altered political balance. Ministers and generals navigated court intrigues to preserve careers. Strategic thinking and alliances were essential for survival consistently. Bureaucratic reforms and examinations reshaped court power dynamics. Merit-based appointments challenged hereditary and factional privilege gradually. Scholar officials became influential, balancing noble and imperial interests. Tension between meritocracy and aristocratic influence defined court polite. Ceremonial rituals reinforced hierarchy and legitimacy subtly. Seating, protocol, and public appearances conveyed authority and rank. Manipulation of rituals allowed factions to assert influence tactically. Symbolism in court life reflected both social and political messages. Foreign envoys and ambassadors introduced additional court dynamics. Diplomacy required negotiation, strategy, and patronage within palace circles. International relations sometimes exploited by internal factions strategically. Court intrigue extended beyond domestic politics into foreign policy. Emperors' favor determined access to resources, positions, and opportunities. Patience, intelligence, and persuasion ensured survival and advancement. Officials cultivated networks to protect interests and support ambitions. Skillful navigation of court politics, essential for long-term influence. Information networks within palace and bureaucracy supported intrigue actively. Spies, messengers, and advisors transmitted intelligence efficiently. Knowledge of rivals' intentions allowed preemptive action strategically. Control of information reinforced power and protected positions carefully. Succession crises intensified political intrigue significantly. Empresses, princes, and ministers maneuvered to secure preferred heirs. Manipulation of factions and alliances shaped dynastic continuity actively. Court politics often intertwined with family and factional interests closely. Rivalries occasionally erupted into purges and imprisonments publicly. Fear, loyalty, and ambition influenced decision-making constantly. Strategic negotiation minimized risk while enhancing influence effectively. Court intrigue demanded both cunning and prudence from participants. Cultural patronage reinforced political authority in subtle ways. Literary salons, artistic commissions, and scholarly support showcased prestige. Influence extended through networks of talent, culture, and ideology. Control of cultural production strengthened both power and reputation. Tong court politics required flexibility, intelligence, and vigilance continuously. Navigating intrigue was essential for survival and advancement effectively. Emperor, officials, and noble families balanced personal and state interests. Court dynamics shaped governance, culture, and imperial authority. Position rose from concubine to imperial consort strategically. Her intelligence, ambition, and political skill ensured survival. She gained influence through Emperor Taizong's and Guozong's favor. Careful manipulation of court factions strengthened her authority steadily. Wu eliminated rivals with calculated precision and subtle tactics. Political opponents faced exile, demotion, or forced retirement. Her rise relied on alliances with loyal officials and generals. Control of information and palace networks enhanced her power significantly. She cultivated the support of scholar officials through reforms. Meritocratic appointments strengthened her political base effectively. Promotion of talented officials enhanced efficiency and loyalty. Cultural and educational patronage reinforced her legitimacy publicly. Wu Zetian emphasized Buddhism to justify her unprecedented rule. Claimed divine sanction through religious symbolism and prophecy. Temples and sutras celebrated her as a chosen ruler. Religious legitimacy helped consolidate her authority throughout the empire. In 690, she officially declared herself emperor formally. Wu established the Zhou Dynasty, interrupting Tang temporarily. Her ascension marked the only time a woman ruled China. Demonstrated her skill navigating patriarchal political structures successfully. She maintained stability while introducing administrative reforms actively. Bureaucracy strengthened under her leadership with merit-based appointments. Provincial governance improved through inspection tour and supervision. Her rule emphasized efficiency, accountability, and centralized authority. Were promoted capable women to positions of influence within court. Female attendants, secretaries, and advisors reinforced her inner power. Court women became allies in managing palace politics strategically. Her leadership showcased women's potential in governance and diplomacy. She managed the succession carefully to secure dynasty continuity. Princes and imperial relatives monitored or guided under her supervision. Her policies balanced loyalty, competence, and family interests. Succession planning reduced internal conflict while consolidating her reign. Wu Zetian's intelligence network ensured early warning of opposition. Spies, informants, and loyal officials relayed crucial information consistently. Prevented plots, rebellions, and conspiracies from undermining her authority. Control of palace communication was essential for her survival and power. Her reign encouraged talent from all social classes to rise. Merit-based examinations and appointments opened opportunities broadly. Officials gained authority based on ability rather than aristocratic birth. Innovation and administrative reform reflected her pragmatic approach to governance. Wu also used symbolic imagery to reinforce imperial authority. Statues, inscriptions, and public works glorified her reign publicly. Religious and cultural patronage emphasized her moral and divine legitimacy. Art and ritual legitimized her unprecedented position as female emperor. Despite controversy, her leadership ensured Tang stability and prosperity. Military, economic, and cultural systems functioned effectively under her rule. Her political skill secured loyalty and compliance from officials. Wu Zetian demonstrated remarkable strategy, intelligence, and leadership capability. Her unprecedented rule challenged gender norms and influenced future generations. Women's roles in politics and society gained new precedents subtly. Her reign left lasting impact on governance, bureaucracy, and culture. Empress Wu remains a symbol of female authority in Chinese history. Empress Wu implemented wide-ranging reforms systematically. She strengthened central government control over provinces actively. Merit-based civil service exams promoted capable officials effectively. Bureaucracy became more efficient, fair, and accountable under her rule. She reduced the power of hereditary aristocracy deliberately. Landed elites faced checks through taxation and administrative oversight. Provincial governors appointed based on talent rather than birth. Central authority reinforced through monitoring and direct supervision consistently. Wu reorganized ministries to improve governance and clarity. Administrative duties clarified, responsibilities assigned with precision. Departments specialized in finance, justice, military, and public works. Efficiency increased while reducing corruption and bureaucratic overlap significantly. She expanded the civil service examination system greatly. Scholars from non-aristocratic backgrounds gained entry into bureaucracy. Social mobility increased for talented commoners and intellectuals. Meritocratic appointments ensured capable governance at all levels. Taxation reform improved collection and reduced burden on peasants. Granaries, agricultural monitoring, and accurate records enhanced efficiency. Resources allocated effectively for military, public works, and social needs. State revenue stabilized under careful administration and oversight consistently. Were established inspection tool to supervise provincial officials directly. Corruption, mismanagement, and rebellion risks identified and corrected quickly. Inspectors reported to central authorities, ensuring accountability. Governance strengthened through active supervision and evaluation of performer. She encouraged loyalty through reward and recognition systematically. Competent officials promoted and rewarded for effective administration. Successful reforms incentivized efficiency and allegiance to the throne. Her policies reinforced meritocracy and reduced factional favoritism effectively. Monastic and religious institutions supported her administrative objectives strategically. Buddhist temples assisted in record-keeping, education, and moral guidance. Religion reinforced loyalty and compliance with central authority actively. Integration of spiritual and political structures enhanced G. Legal reforms clarified laws and standardized procedures comprehensively. Criminal and civil codes revised to ensure consistency and fairness. Judicial administration improved, reducing local abuses of power. Tong Code strengthened as a lasting framework under Wu's supervision. She strengthened military organization and provincial defense capabilities. Generals appointed for competence rather than personal connections. Garrisons monitored and supplied efficiently to maintain stability. Military and civil integration enforced territorial control and internal security. Wu promoted infrastructure projects to support administration and commerce. Canals, roads, and bridges improved transportation and economic efficiency. Urban planning reinforced central control and access to resources. Public works demonstrated both administrative skill and imperial presence. Education and scholarship integrated with administration under Wu's leadership. Academies trained officials in law, history, and governance effectively. Promotion of learning ensured continuity and quality of bureaucracy. Knowledge dissemination reinforced competent governance and institutional memory. Empress Wu's reforms strengthened imperial authority profoundly. Centralized control, meritocracy, and oversight improved political stability. Her policies enhanced both efficiency and equity in administration. Tong government became more resilient, organized, and enduring under her reign. Tong society witnessed significant social mobility and transformation. Merit-based examinations allowed commoners to enter bureaucracy. Talented individuals gained positions previously limited to aristocrats. Education became a pathway to influence and social advancement. Women experienced more opportunities in Tong society actively. Noble women, scholars, and merchants exerted influence publicly. Empress Wu demonstrated female potential in politics dramatically. Gender roles became more flexible, especially in elite circles. Urbanization created new social and economic roles consistently. Merchants, artisans, and performers thrived in cities like Chang'an. Economic opportunities expanded beyond traditional agricultural and aristocratic occupations. City life fostered innovation, trade, and cultural participation actively. Religious and educational institutions supported social transformation consistently. Monasteries, temples, and academies offered literacy and vocational training. Scholarship promoted ethical conduct, administration, and technical expertise. Access to learning allowed broader participation in governance. Artisans and craftsmen gained status through skill and reputation. Woodblock printing, ceramics, textiles, and metalwork became valued professions. Innovation encouraged both economic mobility and cultural contribution effectively. Merit and ability complemented traditional social hierarchies in practice. Marriage, kinship, and family networks remained central to status. Women influenced family wealth, alliances, and social positioning actively. Dowries, inheritances, and household management shaped local power structures. Strategic relationships connected households to political and economic networks. Legal and administrative reforms strengthened the commoner's social position. Provincial officials monitored equity in taxation and resource distribution. Laws provided protection and opportunities for non-aristocratic citizens. Social order balanced hierarchy with merit-based inclusion successfully. Cultural life reflected evolving social roles visibly. Poetry, music, fashion, and art became accessible to broader classes. Urban centers hosted performances, markets, and salons inclusive of diverse people. Participation in cultural activities enhanced prestige and social identity. Trade expanded economic options for lower and middle classes. Merchants, bankers, and market operators gained wealth and recognition. Economic success sometimes rivaled traditional aristocratic influence publicly. Commerce became an avenue for mobility alongside education and service. Military service offered social advancement and recognition consistently. Soldiers could rise to command positions based on merit and skill. Frontier postings provided opportunity for land, wealth, and reputation. Military accomplishments complemented scholarly and economic pathways to status. Religious participation influenced social integration and moral authority. Monastic and temple networks offered education, employment, and community roles. Charitable activities enhanced reputation and reinforced social cohesion actively. Religion intersected with governance, education, and economy too. Tang literature, history, and arts recorded evolving social norms. Poets and historians highlighted mobility, talent, and cultural sophistication. Artistic works celebrated achievements of both elites and skilled commoners. Documentation reinforced the ideals of merit, morality, and cosmopolitanism. Legal reforms affected women's rights and family roles positively. Property inheritance, dowries, and legal recognition strengthened female position. Elite and commoner women participated more actively in economic and social life. Tang laws codified evolving responsibilities and privileges for diverse social roles became more dynamic, balancing tradition and innovation. Merit, talent, and opportunity complemented inherited status actively. Tang society encouraged adaptability, education, and contribution to empire. Cultural, economic, and political developments redefined identity and mobility. Tang Dynasty is considered a cultural high point. Art, literature, and music flourished across the empire. Architecture, fashion, and urban planning reflected sophistication. Cities like Chang'an showcased cosmopolitanism and innovation prominently. Poetry and literature reached unprecedented heights under Tang. Poets expressed emotion, nature, and political reflection vividly. Scholarly work included history, philosophy, and Buddhist texts. Artistic creativity reflected both elite and popular participation. Tang painting and sculpture blended realism and symbolism elegantly. Murals, statues, and calligraphy adorned temples and palaces. Techniques incorporated Central Asian, Indian, and local styles. Art demonstrated religious devotion, imperial power, and aesthetic taste. Music, dance, and performance thrived under imperial patronage. Court musicians composed, performed and innovated across genres. Instruments, melodies, and styles reflected multicultural influence. Public festivals and urban entertainment promoted cultural vibrancy. Tang society was highly cosmopolitan and integrated diverse peoples. Merchants, scholars, and travelers brought ideas and goods globally. Cultural, religious, and artistic exchange enriched both urban and rural life. Cosmopolitanism reinforced Tang identity and imperial prestige actively. Education and scholarship advanced under imperial and elite patronage. Academies, libraries, and temples preserved and transmitted knowledge. Civil service exams promoted meritocracy and social mobility. Intellectual achievement became a core value of Tang civilization. Tang influence extended to East Asian states significantly. Korea, Japan, and Vietnam adopted Tang political, cultural, and administrative models. Bureaucratic systems, Confucian principles, and city planning were emulated. Tang culture shaped governance, law, and education beyond China. The development of the poetry canon became a major legacy. Li Bai celebrated nature, emotion, and adventure in lyrical verse. Du Fu documented social issues, morality, and historical events vividly. Poetic forms inspired future generations and defined classical Chinese literature. Tang-era literature emphasized moral reflection and human experience. Poetry and prose captured societal norms, political observation, and personal sentiment. Scholars and poets became central to culture, bureaucracy, and intellectual life. Tang literary achievements became benchmarks for East Asian ed. Institutional models were copied abroad to strengthen governance. Civil service exams spread to Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Administrative divisions, taxation systems, and military organization influenced neighboring states. Tang governance inspired political structure and bureaucratic efficiency region. Cultural influence also extended through art, fashion, and ritual practices. Buddhist and Taoist traditions, music, and painting were adopted abroad. Ceremonial customs reflected Tang court etiquette and imperial symbolism. East Asian elites looked to Tang as a model of refinement. Tang's technological and scientific achievements persisted in memory. Printing, medicine, astronomy, and engineering influenced neighboring regions. Knowledge transfer strengthened education, trade, and administration abroad. Tang innovations laid groundwork for future dynasties in China and beyond. Trade and Silk Road connections enhanced Tang's regional impact. Cultural exchange facilitated spread of goods, ideas, and religions. Art, literature, and technological practices circulated across East Asia. Tang prosperity and sophistication became a reference point for neighbors. The dynasty is remembered as a golden age of China. Economic prosperity, political stability, and cultural achievements coincided. Urbanization, cosmopolitanism, and artistic excellence defined Tang society. Public memory enshrined Tang, an ideal model of governance and culture. Tang urban centers became hubs of trade, learning, and entertainment. Chang'an and Luoyang symbolized imperial grandeur and cosmopolitan life. City planning, markets, and public spaces reflected administrative skill. Cultural integration created enduring patterns of social and economic activity. Religious and philosophical traditions flourished and integrated society. Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism shaped morality, education, and ritual. Temples and monasteries became centers of learning, art, and social welfare. Religious patronage reinforced cultural and political cohesion in Tang society. Tang art reflected both sophistication and accessibility. Murals, ceramics, and calligraphy blended aesthetic skill with functional purpose. Artistic patronage by elites, monks, and imperial court supported creativity. Legacy of Tang visual culture influenced subsequent Chinese dynasties profoundly. Tang poetry became central to cultural identity and education. Examination systems tested knowledge of classical poets and texts. Poetic composition cultivated literacy, expression, and moral reasoning. Li Bai, Du Fu, and contemporaries became enduring symbols of Chinese literary heritage. Tang-era fashion and music influenced East Asian courts and society. Silk garments, ceremonial robes, and musical styles were widely emulated. Cultural refinement reflected status, cosmopolitan influence, and imperial authority. Tang aesthetic standards guided art, ceremony, and elite lifestyle. 4 Gen. Institutions established by Tang promoted lasting governance structures. Centralized bureaucracy, law codes, and civil examinations became benchmarks. Administrative and legal innovations were adapted by neighboring states. Tang political model combined meritocracy, hierarchy, and efficiency. Successful Tang Dynasty fostered a lasting identity for Chinese civilization. Golden Age reputation highlighted integration of culture, governance, and society. Cosmopolitanism, artistic achievement, and intellectual innovation define this era. Tang legacy remained a touchstone of excellence for future dynasties. Cultural achievements and institutional frameworks persisted despite dynastic decline. Subsequent rulers built upon Tang innovations in governance and culture. Legacy extended beyond politics into education, art, literature, and religion. Tang era remained a symbol of stability, prosperity, and refinement.